But I've sat here this morning, and I appreciate the bipartisan words. But with all due respect, Madam Vice Chair, when you say that the President of the United States has been bribed,
I said potential.
that's pretty strong. When you say that the Director of the Office of Management and Budget is corrupt, that's pretty strong. And I think if you're going to say someone has been bribed or someone is corrupt, you ought to be specific. And I notice you haven't been. And I don't think this is, I've listened to a lot of pretty words about bipartisanship, but then we get personal. I don't think it's productive. It's up to you. This is America. You can say and believe what you want. But if you're going to say somebody's been bribed, you need to say specifically by whom.
It is the moment Washington, D.C. has been dreading for 25 years. While the system hides behind jargon and bureaucracy, Senator John Kennedy just walked into the room with the one thing they can't handle: the truth. Today, the curtain is being pulled back on a betrayal so deep it will shake your trust in the system forever. You are about to witness a masterclass in savage accountability. Kennedy isn't just asking questions, he's delivering the final blow to a corrupt agenda. But before we reveal the evidence that changed everything, smash that subscribe button if you believe Kennedy is the only hero left in the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Senator.
In America, unlike other countries where they let you die in a ditch, in America, if you're too poor to be sick, we'll pay for your doctor. Isn't that right?
It is.
And one of the programs we do that through is Medicaid.
Correct.
Okay. And this money for Medicaid, it didn't just fall from heaven. We thank heaven for it, but it came out of people's pockets, didn't it?
Every dime of it.
And some of that money is stolen, isn't it?
Yes.
And the states, not all of them, but many of them, allow it to be stolen, don't they?
Yes.
Let's take Medicaid in California, for example. I don't mean to just pick on California, but because this happens in other states. We saw it happen in Minnesota, for example. But in California, for every dollar that the California state government puts up for Medicaid, for the Obamacare portion of Medicaid, the federal taxpayer puts up $9, don't they? And so, is that right?
That's correct, Senator.
And so as a result, California has allowed thousands and thousands of these social assistance and so-called health care providers pop up in California, haven't they?
Yes.
And some of those providers steal the money, don't they?
Yes, we know that to be true. Yes.
And the money never gets to the people they supposedly are trying to help. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And the other way that California and others abuse the fact that they're putting up $1 and the American taxpayers putting up $9. Did I mention it was $9?
I think some say it's even more, but yes, 9 work.
They expand the services, don't they?
Yes.
Because some states, like California, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush. It's not everybody in California state government, but it's a lot of them. They see this as free money, don't they?
They're not paying for it, yes.
Isn't it a fact that, for example, Medicaid in California will pay a provider to provide tribal prayers? I looked all this up.
I mean, I'll accept that. I didn't know that, but yes.
That California will actually pay a health care provider, I didn't know this was a medical expertise, to pay for exorcisms. Is that right?
I'll accept that, Senator, but that's...
They pay, the California Medicaid program will pay for herbal medicines, meal deliveries. They'll pay for housing. I don't know what housing has to do with health care. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you aware that that the Medicaid program using federal money, taxpayer money, will pay for an in-home chef.
Yes.
Okay?
Even if it's a family member, yes.
Yeah, they'll even pay for gymnasium fees through Medicaid in California. They'll pay for bicycles, scooters, gym memberships. Did you know that?
Yes, several states do, but California does for sure.
They'll even repay your student loans. Were you aware of that?
I was not aware of the student loans repayment.
Yeah, they'll repay somebody's student loans to encourage them to become a health care provider. I mean, California, they're just setting all kind of records. These folks are they're wild people. California's got 12% of the population. In the last 10 years, they're responsible for half of these new so-called health providers to provide exorcisms and other things. Now, what the hell are we doing about it? Why has this gone on for so long?
Senator, listen, it's a great question. And what you just described are programs that are allowed under the program. You have a whole other issue in California where a lot of these folks are just stealing the money, not even running it through for exorcism.
They're thieves, aren't they?
They're thieves, correct.
And California just watches it happen, don't they? Not everybody in California. The government, does, doesn't it?
Well, that's the challenge in a lot of states, is that we don't have a state government, which you all have entrusted to run these programs and take care of the money that you all give them. There's state structures that absolutely do not do any compliance, and they don't do their job.
Because they don't have no incentive to. They're getting free money. Isn't that right?
Yes, I think so, yes.
We got to change this, General.
We're trying.
I call this a slush fund. You want to talk about slush fund? This is a tier 1 slush fund that's been going on for years and years and years. Billions, hundreds of billions of dollars is stolen.
Yes, Senator, and that's why, look, this department stood up a whole new fraud division, and AUSAs around the country prosecute fraud every day. So it's not as if we didn't have the work out there, but it's so systematically taking money from the American taxpayer that we very much believe that it needs its own stand-up structure, and I think it's true for the reasons that you just said.
If you need an exorcism, you can go to California, can't you?
Thank you, Senator.
Okay, so in fairness, Senator Kennedy.
Sorry, Martin. Mr. Director, welcome. I bet you just love talking about where to put the FBI building, don't you? Probably one of your favorite topics. I've got 2 questions. Number 1, if you took the major Mexican drug cartels, which also traffic people into the United States, and turned them upside down and shook them, President Lopez Obrador would fall out of their pockets, wouldn't he?
Well, I don't know that I can comment on a specific individual's corruption other than through cases that we bring, but I understand the point that you're making, for sure.
We're not getting much cooperation out of Mexico, are we?
Let me put it this way. While we have had some successes here and there in terms of extraditions and so forth, and I appreciate those, and I'm grateful to our Mexican partners for those, especially at the working level, we need a whole lot more from Mexico than we've gotten in terms of shutting down the cartels and stopping the flow of the precursors. I mean, I could go on and on. So I'm grateful for the successes we have had, but we need a heck of a lot more, is the way I would answer that.
Why don't we use leverage of what I call NAFTA 2 to try to encourage the president of Mexico to cooperate more?
Yeah, I mean, NAFTA, of course, is a trade agreement, and I'm not really an expert on trade relations. Certainly, from an FBI perspective, we welcome every tool in the toolbox to try to improve the relationship and the cooperation, and I'm hopeful that the Mexican government will see the value of building on the successes we have had and take it to the level that it needs to be, because it's not where it needs to be.
Okay. Here's my second question. We know that Jeffrey Epstein, who is now deceased, and Ms. Maxwell, his associate, who's in prison, were engaged in a conspiracy of sex trafficking with minors. So were others. It's been widely reported. What's the FBI doing to investigate the other people that were involved in these sex trafficking rings?
Well, I'm not sure that I can confirm any specific individual.
Well, let me
being
put it this way.
investigated.
Let me give you some facts, widely reported. Jeffrey Epstein had video surveillance in all of his homes and on his private island. And there have been articles after articles from witnesses who have said he videotaped sex acts with prominent people because he was trying to incur with young girls that he had procured to try to incur favor with those prominent people and potentially to be able to blackmail them. Now, that's a fact. And the FBI and other federal agencies have raided his houses. Do you have those tapes?
Again, I can't discuss the specifics of our law enforcement operations related to Mr. Epstein or Ms. Maxwell, but obviously we had very active investigation related to both of them. But whether it extends to other people, I'm not sure that's something that I can comment on.
A suit was filed yesterday against one of those prominent people by one of the young women sex trafficked, allegedly, said he was part of the ring. It's on the front page, I don't know, is this the New York Times, Wall Street Journal? And we keep seeing article after article after article, and we keep hearing about prominent person after prominent person after prominent person. I just want to know if these prominent people are above the law and are going to be and aren't being investigated, or is the FBI investigating them?
Well, no one is above the law, number one. As to whether specific people are being investigated, that's not something that I, as I'm sure you can appreciate, can engage on here. We've devoted significant resources to the investigation.
Is it ongoing?
I'm not sure there's anything I can share with you on that, but let me see if we can get back to you and provide a little more information.
Well, for example,
about
these allegations in this lawsuit, the civil action.
Yeah, I haven't seen
You ought to read
the article.
It'll trigger your gag reflex. Is the FBI going to investigate that?
Well, again, I haven't seen the article, but I would be happy to take a look at it and take it back and see if it's part of something
I'd
we're
just
already
like to
working on.
know,
I share your...
yeah, is the FBI still investigating this, or are these prominent people going to go scot-free?
I'm not sure that I can tell you whether or not there is ongoing work being devoted to this. I would be happy to take a look at the specific article. I share your disgust at Mr. Epstein's conduct and Ms. Maxwell's conduct.
And others.
The whole operation.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair. Sorry, Martin. You're a fine American anyway.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Abate, am I saying your name right?
Yes, Senator, thank you.
You are the Deputy Director of the FBI, is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
Is there any doubt in your mind or in the collective mind of the FBI that President Trump was shot in the ear by a bullet fired by the assassin crooks?
Senator, there is absolutely no doubt in the FBI's mind
It
whether former President Trump was hit with a bullet and wounded in the ear. No doubt, there never has been.
Okay.
I've been part of this investigation since the very beginning, and that has never been raised.
You're sure?
Yes.
It wasn't a space laser.
No,
It wasn't a murder hornet.
absolutely not.
It wasn't Sasquatch.
No, Senator.
It was a bullet
It was a bullet, Senator. 100%.
fired by crooks
Yes, sir.
that hit President Trump in the ear and almost killed him.
100%, Senator.
Okay, glad we cleared that up. I don't want to get off.
On condition that be nice to all of these folks. So with that, Senator Kennedy.
I'm always nice. How many of you worked for Senator Schmidt? All 4 of you. Is it true that he was suspended 23 times in junior high school in February alone?
They're under oath.
Look, I'm not trying to trick you. I'm not going to ask you how you rule on cases, and I'm not going to ask you about your political beliefs. I just want to know how you think. Let's start with the counselor on the end. Let's suppose I'm a cop, and I'm on duty, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I see somebody driving down the road, many other people around. It's on a Saturday night. Can I stop him?
Just because you see him driving around?
Yeah.
There would need to be more of a basis than that.
So the answer is no.
Correct.
Okay. Let's suppose that I recognize him. And on 3 previous occasions, he's been caught for charged with DWI. But he's not driving erratically. I'm the cop again. Can I stop him constitutionally?
Same answer. No.
No.
You would need more than that to be able to conduct an investigative stop.
Why doesn't that give me reasonable suspicion?
I think merely the fact that he was driving at 3 a.m. and had been pulled over previously for driving under the influence wouldn't be enough. Now, it's certainly, if he were swerving or driving improperly in some other way, if he committed a traffic violation or something along those lines, certainly the officer would be well within his rights.
So we can agree our privacy is precious to us, even if we're in a car, right?
I would agree that the Fourth Amendment very thankfully protects us all from unreasonable searches and seizures.
So how come the cops can set up a roadblock and stop everybody when they don't have either reasonable suspicion or probable cause, just to check and see if they have insurance?
So there are limitations on scenarios like that, roadblock
But
cases.
can they do it first, counsel? I mean,
Officers can set up roadblocks if they are applying it based on a neutral and articulable standard, and if that standard relates to something that is specific to automobiles. So they could not stop every car to search.
you're right about the law, but why is they don't have reasonable suspicion. They're stopping everybody. They certainly don't have probable cause. It's intrusive. I mean, I can spend 10 minutes in line for them to check my insurance. What's the basis for that being constitutional?
I think the way I would frame it is that the courts have decided that scenarios like that, and in scenarios like that, officers would not be acting unreasonably. So they would not be violating somebody's Fourth Amendment rights.
Because the Fourth Amendment
guarantees against
prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures.
Correct.
And how do you determine whether something's unreasonable or not?
Well, I think that would very much depend on the situation, the specific facts and the context.
Don't you balance the costs and benefits?
In a scenario like that, yes.
Okay, cool. Judge, what's the rule now that the Supreme Court follows on reapportionment cases? Congressional redistricting.
Congressional redistricting. My understanding, Senator, is that the Supreme Court has decided that that's a political issue, and under the political issue doctrine that essentially the courts really don't have much of anything to say about political redistricting.
If Missouri's legislature gets together and it redraws districts, and they're, let's say, a majority of Democrats in the legislature, so they say, we're going to redraw these districts to benefit Democrats. and we're not going to be reluctant to say so. They say it in front of God and country. Is that okay?
Well, it's pursuant to the Supreme Court precedent. It's legal.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm not going to get to all of you. Counselor? Just counselor. Yes, ma'am. Do you think the meaning of the Constitution is immutable?
So I think that the U.S. Supreme Court has said that
I want to know what you think.
So, yeah, my view in terms of like what it is that, you know, my way of looking at the Constitution is to say, what does the text say, and what did it mean at the time that it was passed? And this is something that the U.S. Supreme Court also says. If that's not clear, I think there are other things you can look to, like history and tradition, to decide what the
You
text
look
means.
to what it meant at the time it was passed?
Correct.
What it meant to whom?
To the people who were passing it.
To the people who wrote it?
So I think there are various different ways of looking at this, and I think the U.S. Supreme Court has said that you look at the meaning that the words would have to the public at the time that the Constitution was ratified.
That's right. I'm done. Thank you. Congratulations.
Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and appreciate your patience in allowing me to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chamberlain, I believe 4 telephone companies received these subpoenas for the phone records, the metadata of 20 members of Congress. Is that your understanding?
That sounds right to me, yes.
Okay. I don't have time to talk about all of them. Let me just pick one. Verizon. About 90,000 employees, I think. $140 billion worth of revenue. Does Verizon hire dummies to work in its legal department?
I should think not. They've probably got a good reservoir of lawyers to pick from.
Okay. I suppose you were one of the lawyers at Verizon, and you don't strike me as a dummy.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And you got a subpoena from Jack Smith with an NDO, non-disclosure order, signed by Judge Boasberg. Do you think a reasonably competent lawyer at Verizon would know who Jack Smith was?
Yes, I think so.
Do you think a reasonably competent lawyer at Verizon would know who Judge Boasberg was or would inquire about him?
Yeah, I think you could pretty quickly Google him, and if you were concerned that maybe he wasn't actually a federal district judge, I think it's pretty obvious that you'd be able to figure out what's going on.
I mean, it was pretty widely known that President Biden instructed the Attorney General to sue President Trump, and that he hired Jack Smith, wasn't it?
Yes.
I mean, that was on the front page of every paper. If you were an attorney at Verizon and you got a subpoena like this, wouldn't you say, maybe I need to check and see who Mr. Smith is subpoenaing here?
Yeah, and especially once I found out it was a representative, it would immediately raise that flag of, like, maybe there's a legal exception here that doesn't apply in other cases.
Do we know if the employee who received this subpoena at Verizon even sought a legal opinion from an attorney at Verizon?
I do not know.
Well, let's just assume for a second that Verizon sophisticated company that it is not so incompetent that they wouldn't have had a lawyer look at this. Lawyer looks at it and says, Jack Smith. Lawyer looks at it and says, NDO signed by Judge Boasberg. Lawyer looks at the names as a reasonably competent lawyer would. Says, they're members of Congress. If that was you, what would you do?
Well, I'd make a few phone calls. I'd do legal research to confirm that, complying with this order was obviously lawful, and I might, gently try and push back on the subpoena to try and understand, what was going on.
In fact, you would probably discover the law, being the very competent lawyer that you are, that said no judicial order can bar Verizon from picking up the phone and calling the member of Congress, wouldn't you?
That's right.
You'd probably find that statute.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did find that statute, in order to protect Verizon, as you're their lawyer, wouldn't you have filed a motion to quash?
That's exactly what I do, yeah.
But Verizon didn't do any of that, did they?
Apparently not.
They just sucked all this information up like a Hoover Deluxe.
Yeah.
They didn't even look at, that we know of, to see if these were members of Congress.
Yes, that's right.
What kind of liability does Verizon have here?
That's a good question. I need to read the statute more clearly to see what what the actual penalties are. But my guess is there would be some pretty reasonable civil penalties for having done so.
What kind of remedies, if any, are there for the fact that Judge Boasberg said that he had reasonable grounds to believe that these members of Congress would destroy evidence, and that he made that conclusion without holding a hearing?
I mean, I think the only remedy to that is political and impeachment. I don't think there's a unique. You can't sue Judge Boasberg for damages for his judicial decision making. So the only remedy is political.
Would you consider it to be grossly incompetent if Judge Boasberg had not even inquired who these people were, and whether they were members of Congress?
Oh, yes, extremely incompetent.
Okay. That's all I've got, Mr. Chairman.
Senator.
Of course, as you know as well as I do, that the FBI cannot censor American speech. It talks about abridging speech, that our First Amendment does. At one time, I think it was during your tenure, the FBI had 80 FBI agents working with social media, encouraging social media to take down accounts and remove, quote, disinformation and election interference. A district court found that the FBI and other agencies asked social media platforms to remove content and to change their moderation policies in a way that violated the First Amendment. And it went up to the Fifth Circuit. The Fifth Circuit limited the injunction, but here's what the Fifth Circuit said. The FBI, quote, likely coerced the platforms into moderating content and encouraged them to do so by effecting changes in their moderation policies, end quote, in violation of the First Amendment. The FBI agreed with the plaintiffs that, quote, I'm quoting the Fifth Circuit, federal agents ran afoul of the First Amendment by coercing and significantly encouraging social media platforms to censor disfavored speech, including by threats of adverse government action, like antitrust enforcement and legal reforms. That's serious. Is the Fifth Circuit wrong?
Well, as you may know, first off, let me just say the opinions talk about a whole bunch of other executive agencies besides the FBI, and I'm not going to speak to what the other agencies did or didn't do. But
well, you weren't the only one. It was the White House. It was Homeland Security. But your folks were there too, all 80 of them, 80 agents.
Well, but
Combing social media every day, calling Twitter, calling Facebook, take that down. Get rid of that account. And it wasn't just on election interference. It was on COVID vaccines. It was on lockdowns.
So a couple things, and I appreciate the opportunity to clarify this. So first, on things like COVID vaccines and stuff like that, the FBI had no role in telling anybody to take anything down. In fact, as you may know, the FBI was the only agency back at that time, and the only agency in the entire intelligence community to reach the conclusion to moderate confidence that the origins of the pandemic were most likely a lab leak in China. We were the only agency, so we most certainly were not encouraging anybody to communicate differently on that. Second, even on the topics we did communicate with social media companies about, from everything I've seen, we in fact did not instruct anybody to take that information down. As to the Fifth Circuit's opinion, as you may also know, we actually hotly contest a lot of the findings, and not just the legal conclusions, but the actual factual findings, and the department has sought Supreme Court review, asked them to vacate the injunction. The Supreme Court's not only vacated the injunction, but granted cert, so I probably should leave it at that.
Let me stop you a second. I've gone way over. I want to ask you one last question. We had a controversy during the election about Mr. Hunter Biden's laptop. And at that time, you had 80 agents interfacing with social media, doing whatever they were doing. The FBI had the Hunter Biden laptop, got it on December 9th, 2019. The New York Post story, which a lot of the social media companies at the suggestion of government took down, the story came out on 10/14/2020. Why didn't the FBI just say, hey, the laptop's real? Why didn't you just tell everybody the laptop's real? We're not vouching for what's on it, but it's real. This isn't a fiction.
Well, as you might imagine, the FBI cannot, especially in a time like that, be talking about an ongoing investigation. Second, I would tell you that at least my understanding is that both the FBI folks involved in the conversations and the Twitter folks involved in the conversations both say that the FBI did not direct Twitter to suppress.
But others were in government.
Well, I can't speak to others in government. That's part of the point that I was trying to make, because the Fifth Circuit's opinion.
But you're the FBI. You're not part of the White House and part of Homeland Security. You're not supposed to be political. You see all this controversy going on. Why didn't the FBI say, time out, folks, we're not getting in the middle of this, but the laptop's real?
Again, we have to be very careful about what we can say, especially in the middle of an election season, because that's precisely some of the problems that led to my predecessors' negative findings from the Inspector General.
Did you hear a gavel?
Thank you, Senator
I heard
Kennedy.
a gavel.
Thank you, Senator. Under Ossoff, Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Director, it seems to me that some people should not have power. I don't care how smart they are. I don't care how experienced they are. They just don't have enough maturity or morality or ethics to exercise power. And I am talking, of course, about your predecessor. You have been a significant improvement. Unlike my experience with you, and what I've observed is that unlike your predecessor, you're not egomaniacal, and you're not egocentric, and you're not a self-aggrandizer. You don't run around like your predecessor going, look at me, look at me. You don't leak to the press like the Titanic. And I know that's a low bar, but I appreciate it. You talk a lot about 38,000 women and men in the FBI, the vast majority of whom do an extraordinary job, and I agree with that. Most of those women and men that you're talking about are in your field offices. I'm not saying there aren't some in the Washington office. But the problems we've had with the FBI over the past decade, you've alluded to them, have come primarily out of the Washington office. I listened carefully to your recitation of your efforts to clean that up. But I think most fair-minded Americans still wonder if there has been real accountability in all cases. And that's the spirit in which I'm going to ask you these questions. Who made the decision at the FBI to raid Mar-a-Lago for those documents?
Well, I'm not sure there's a specific person that made the decision. It was the investigative team that was on that investigation, working with the prosecutors on the case.
Why didn't you just do a consent to search and avoid all the drama?
Well,
You, but whoever made the decision.
yeah. Well, let me try it this way, because obviously we are talking now about not just an ongoing investigation that's being led by a special counsel, but an ongoing investigation being led by a special counsel that's in front of a court with likely very strong views about what it is I can say publicly, which gets at some of your gracious comments about public commentary about cases. But I think in that particular instance, if you look at the affidavit in support of the search warrant, and more importantly, the pleadings that were filed by the prosecutors in the case, they lay out in a very detailed way all the efforts that were made to ensure compliance short of proceeding to a search, as well as now has been charged, actual obstruction of justice. And so, in my experience, again, speaking more generally now, both as a line prosecutor and now as FBI director, when it comes to obtaining classified information, retrieving it, we typically pursue the least intrusive means possible, but if those don't work, and certainly if there's obstruction of justice, which in this case as found by a probable cause standard by the judge, then it's pretty typical to resort to a search warrant.
I don't want to get off the subject here. Did the FBI just settle 2 lawsuits, one wholly, one in part, in which the FBI agreed to give Peter Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Lisa Page $800,000?
It's my understanding, Senator, that the Department of Justice was involved in that, not the FBI.
The FBI had nothing to do with it?
There may have been consultation with our general counsel's office, but
Does the FBI have to sign off on it?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't believe so, but I would want to confirm that.
I would like you to, this would be the same Lisa Page who said to Mr. Strzok, quote, "Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right?" To which Mr. Strzok said, quote, no, he won't. We will stop it." That's the Peter Strzok and Lisa Page I'm talking about. I need to know if the FBI signed off on this lawsuit.
We will
on
get
this
that
settlement.
answer for you, Senator.
And then I need to know who signed off on it. Did you sign off on it?
I absolutely did not and would never sign off on something
Did Chris
like that.
Wray sign off on it, the settlement?
I don't believe he did.
Okay. You don't know what?
Nor do I think he would have.
You need to let me know who signed off on this, if anyone at the FBI. So it was Merrick Garland who agreed to do this, is that right?
Senator, I do not know.
Well, hell,
who signed
somebody
off
had
on
to
that.
agree to it. I've settled a lawsuit before. The client's got to agree to it. You're the client.
Understood. I'm gonna direct into the Department of Justice to
All
answer
right,
those
get
questions.
me
That's-
that information if you would. Mr.
Well, I thank Senator Kennedy, and I would note that his hypothetical is not a hypothetical. While Verizon did willingly comply with handing over the phone records of multiple senators and House members, AT&T did not. And AT&T was subpoenaed by Jack Smith for my phone records. And AT&T's legal counsel concluded that handing my phone records over to Jack Smith would violate the speech and debate clause of the United States Constitution. And you know what Jack Smith and the Department of Justice did? Nothing.
Well, Mr.
They didn't even go to court to try to enforce the subpoena because they knew it was unlawful.
Yes, sir.
And so there was no litigation over it. AT&T ignored the subpoena, and DOJ knew they were engaged in a partisan fishing
Mr. Chairman, did AT&T tell any of the senators? No.
They did not.
Did Verizon tell any of the senators?
They did not.
No. Did Verizon seek a motion to quash?
They did not.
No.
And both were covered by the order signed by Judge Bozeman with zero basis in fact.
Well, let me make a request respectfully, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate these witnesses. I want to get the general counsel of the CEOs of all these telephone companies before this committee.
I would love to do so.
And I
You are
want to
preaching
know,
to the choir.
We've, as one columnist put it, we've crossed the river from Cinderella to what the hell.
Mr. Chairman.
And I would like to have those telecommunication companies come here in front of God and country and explain why they did what they did or did not do.
Mr. Chairman, we actually are having the general counsels and CEOs before our subcommittee on January 27th.
Oh, excellent. Good to know. Senator Huron.
As the echoes of Kennedy's words fade in the Senate chamber, the question isn't just about what was said. It's about what happens next. We've seen the stuttering. We've seen the frantic notes being passed. And most importantly, we've seen the fear in their eyes. Senator Kennedy didn't just win a debate today. He reminded us that common sense is a weapon, and when used correctly, can dismantle even the most guarded secrets of the elite. DC wants you to forget this video. They want this hearing to vanish into the archives, but we won't let that happen. Was Kennedy's drunk sailor roast his best moment, or was the "I don't believe you" line the final nail in the coffin? Your voice is the only thing they can't silence. Drop a comment below with the word "savage" if you stand with Kennedy. Let's make the comments section so loud that Washington has to listen. If you're tired of the lies and ready for the truth, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. Our next exposure is even bigger, and you do not want to be the last one to see it. The game is over for them, but for us, it's just beginning. Click the video on your screen right now to see Kennedy's other viral takedown. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.